So in lab today, you guys are going to be working on cancer as a multi-hit process. The introduction on the first page, you have a graph that looks similar to the one up front, which is the incidence of colon cancer by age. The x-axis shows age, while the y-axis shows the number of people per 100,000. So let's answer the questions below. Number one asks you, based on your current age, how likely is it that you will develop cancer? Go ahead and fill that in. You don't have to use a specific number. You hopefully said that it is relatively low, virtually none, because if you look at the graph from 0 to 20, the dots plotted on the line are nearly at the x-axis, indicating that it is 0. Number two, how likely is it that someone who is 60 years old will develop colon cancer this year? Go ahead and look at your graph. You should have picked the number hopefully around 70 out of 100,000. Number three asks you to look at how likely is it that someone who is 80 years old will develop colon cancer. Take a look at the graph. And you should be able to predict about 350 out of 100,000 will. The last question on the page asks you, how can we explain this change in the risk of person developing colon cancer? Go ahead and turn to your neighbor and make some educated guesses as to the explanation for the change in the risk. I'm hoping you and your neighbor came up with, based on looking at the graph, the idea that age may have been an explanation. Knowing what you know so far, you may have come up with mutations or epigenetics as a result for the causes for cancer. This idea of the explanation behind the development of cancer is what we're going to be looking at on the coming pages. So each one of you has a little sheet that looks like this with a student and a number ranging from 1 to 40. In the 3 columns, it shows their age and gene 1 and gene 2. There is a theory of the one-hit, two-hit hypothesis when it comes to gene mutation and causing cancer. The one-hit is pretty self-explanatory. So if there is a hit, meaning a mutation on one gene that will result in cancer, just with one hit on the gene. Whereas in the two-hit hypothesis, there has to be a hit or a mutation on gene 1 and gene 2. So we're going to simulate this on paper, and then you're going to do a little computer simulation of your own afterward. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to share a number with you, and you're going to select a dot or put a little dot next to that number. So if your individual has the number 6 in gene 1 only, we're only looking at gene 1, if it has the number 6, go ahead and mark a dot next to the gene. So right there, right there, right there. So my person 1 at the age 5, or my first student at age 5, the gene was activated. So that individual is going to have that mutation, and that codes for colon cancer at age 5. For student number 38, that will happen at age 15. And for student 39, they will not result in cancer because they do not have that on gene 1. So go ahead and list the one hit on next to the age on your individual graph that looks something like this. So the numbers for you will be a little different, but you should have at least one number. The other number I'd like you to mark as well is number 16. So if your individual is 16, go ahead and mark it and list it on your graph. We're going to do 2 hits now. So I'm going to give a number and you're going to put a square around it. If your individual has the number 22, put a box around it. So my individual is 22 in gene 1. 22, nope, and 22, no. So in gene 1, if your individual has the number 22, go ahead and put a box around it. So we're going to look at gene 2 now. If your individual has the number 17, go ahead and put a box around it. These numbers represent the random mutations and gene expression of your genes. So for my individuals, 39 did not have anything on gene 1 or gene 2, so nothing happened. My person here had activation at gene 2, but because it did not have activation in gene 1, it does not result in colon cancer. Whereas this individual had activation at gene 1 and gene 2, resulting in colon cancer. Both needed to be present, and that didn't happen until age 75, so the person got colon cancer at age 75. We're going to do one more. For gene 1, go ahead and put a circle around number 16. That's a circle around 16. For gene 1, go ahead and circle 16. Also, always circle the lowest number that you find on the gene. And for gene 2, go ahead and circle number 14. So this time, the first 2 individuals had both genes active. So with the 2-hit hypothesis, both individuals ended up with cancer, while the third person did not because they only had 1 gene activated in both hits. For the individual in the middle, they got cancer at 25 because they had the first gene activated at 20 and the second one at 25. And this individual had the first gene active at 5, and the other one wasn't mutated and active until 55. So go ahead and list the ages on your individual chart. So for me, I would list it at 25 and 55. For my 2 hits, I would mark my individual right at 25, one here and one here. So as a class, I'd like for you guys to come up and share your totals. So I'd have a tally, oops, not there. So I'd have a tally here and here. And if you guys all want to add your tallies, and we'll leave this up on the board for a little bit so that you can complete the graph. We'll actually bring this up at the very end so I can tell you what else you have to do. And this will be the last thing on the board so you can work on this as you go. So the other thing so on Schoology Lab 9, Cancer as a Multi-Hit Process. So in Schoology, under PAL block, it's listed day 9, Cancer as a Multi-Hit Process. There is a text-only link that you should open. This is what you're going to use for the simulator. We'll do the first one together, and then you should be able to figure it out from here. So the first one is just investigating and working with the effects of the number of hits. So you do one hit with 0.5 mutations, which is on the table on the next page. And we're going to look at age 25, 60, and 80. So at age 25, we're going to look at the percent right here. And it shows that at age 25, the percent is 96.88. So you want to write that in the box. And then at 60, the percent is 99.89. And then at 80, it's at 100. So you're going to continue to change the number of hits on this sheet and answer the questions. When you turn the page, you're going to investigate the effects of changing the mutation rate, and you are going to leave the number of hits at 1, and you're just going to change the number of mutation rates to 0.1, 0.5, and 1, and then you can select the different numbers ranging 0 to 1 and answer those questions. On the second to last page, you are going to look at the effects of changing both the number of hits and the mutation rate. So you'll start with 1 and 0.1, and then you can vary this from 1 to 7, the number of hits from 1 to 7, and the mutation rate from 0 to 1. And you're going to run the simulator and answer a couple of questions. On the last page, you have the extension. And has a couple quotes, or a few quotes. One regarding cancer being a disease of aging. Another one about cigarettes causing cancer, but in a delayed way, as well as genes and increased susceptibility. If you have any questions, I'll be in class at the very, very end, so feel free to ask me then. You will have the rest of the period to work on this. So please use your time wisely. And yeah, good luck. Here is the chart. If we'll just leave this on freeze, you guys can work on this and have fun in class.